Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, the other day I made a video talking about how bad we are at guesstimating our chance of failure or success when we roll a d20. Actually, we're really kind of bad at using most mechanics unless they really spell it out to us like D100. But people had asked. I got some comments, including one by RileyLum, which is a good comment, asking, does it really matter if we know what our chance of success or failure is when we roll dice? And the answer is no and yes. How's that for sticking to my guns or providing a clear message? But what do I mean? Let's talk about this a little bit further. RileyLum gave this great example that I gave years ago. I think I probably have 2 or 3 videos talking about this in terms of what we really see our chances are. And they said it very similarly. So in real life, when we are presented with some kind of task or challenge or, whatever it happens to be, we have, maybe a small scale of guesstimating what our chances might be. And this might range from there's no way I can fail at this unless I actually trip over my own feet and swallow my own spit and start choking at the same time. Or, yeah, pretty sure I could do that. Or maybe, yeah, I could probably do that. To maybe 50-50, if we can even really guesstimate that. 50-50 is already pretty dire. Or, yeah, maybe it's possible I could do that too. Yeah, is this necessary? To flat out, there's no way I can do this, Hail Mary, maybe, but no, yeah. I'm not doing this unless I absolutely positively have to. And that's about the range. We maybe have 6 or 7 in us in terms of being able to guesstimate or assess our probable chance of success or failure at any given task. And so does this matter in games? Yes. And why it matters is that it affects how we play. It affects how we make decisions. And if we have a better grasp or a grasp, or at least we think we know what our chances of success or failure are, whatever that happens to be, however we're conceptualizing that really tends to affect how we make decisions in games. Do I attempt this or not? Whether it's a pass-fail task or just, is there a range of possibilities? What are those and how probable are they? And it's funny, I recall that I used that argument one time talking about the idea that we can only kind of know a little bit, talking about, using different mechanics in the game where, there was one game, I forget what the game was. It was an old school Renaissance type game where it gave you, if there's no rule for this, there's 3 or 4 different ways you could adjudicate this. I think it might have been a D20 roll high, D20 roll low, under ability score, maybe roll 3d6 under ability score, maybe roll 2d6 and, whatever it happens to be. For me, I was thinking, well, it doesn't really matter. As long as we, at any given moment, the game master picks one, uses it, we'll adjudicate that, we'll move on. Now, my friend Jason, yes, that Jason, Dark Age of Man Jason, he had a different perspective. He wanted to know, and I believe he was a player in this game. He wanted to know, let's pick one because I want to be able to know, what the probabilities are. I want to be able to gauge my ability to do something. I don't want it to be behind the screen, so to speak. And we had a lot of great discussions about that, Jason and I, when we played things like Lamentations in Prussia a long time ago, and I was using some mechanics, and he found the experience very different, being a player rather than the game master. And the mechanics, choosing mechanics at will. While that was acceptable to him as a game master, he realized as a player he didn't really like it because, once again, he didn't know, he had a less of an ability to be able to estimate what his chances of success or failure were, to be able to wrap his head around what's actually happening. In a different way, my friend Same Old G would say, I want to see the goddamn dices. I want to know what I'm rolling for, right? So different mechanics are more or less opaque or transparent to us. Something like D100, that's incredibly transparent. We can see it right there. Depending on the system, we may, be able to, whatever the system is, we can kind of assess what our chance of success might be at a given, in a given moment. And then we make decisions based upon that. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of confounding variables in this argument. So I can't really give you a completely airtight argument and say this is the only thing that affects it, because it's not. Things like the genre, the tone of the game, what the game is supposed to be doing, what we're supposed to be doing in the game. Does the game involve a lot of fail forward, or is failure really bad and usually ends in your untimely death, or things going horribly, horribly awry? Is the game particularly lethal? Or is it much more forgiving? Is it much more based on, like, say, collaborative story creation? Or is it based on really simulating what might actually happen, and simulating the physics of this world? And, there's a whole spectrum, or several spectrums that all these things can lie on. So I get it. All those things will affect the way that we play and make decisions. However, the mechanics themselves and our ability to judge what our chances of success or failure or whatever the outcomes might be, that affects how we make these decisions. And it's funny, I don't have any statistical data, I can't back this up, but I would be willing to bet you that people would be more willing to say, you know what, I think I can roll an 18 or higher on a D20. Okay, I'll take that chance, rather than saying, okay, you have a 1 in 6 chance to do this. And I'm not talking about listening at doors. I'm talking about something that can really go wrong, even though the 1 in 6 chance is greater than rolling an 18 or higher in a D20. Psychologically, I'm willing to bet that more people would choose that, or would say, yes, I'll try that. I'll take the risk, as opposed to like a 1 in 6. If you were to say, okay, you have a 17% chance of doing that, I think a lot of people would not take that chance. That if you're using some kind of die pool game where the possibility might be even a little bit more opaque, and I unfortunately don't have a chart in front of me, but like, let's just say you've got a 10 die pool, and maybe you need like a ridiculous amount of successes, maybe like 9 or something like that. You might be, I think that's probably less than 17%. You might be more confident. I think I might be able to do that, as opposed to seeing the 17% chance on a D100. Your ability to gauge properly or improperly your chances of doing something definitely, in my experience, affects how you play the game and the decisions you make. So that's one of the reasons that it's important to be able to see these things, to be able to know these things, because sometimes you find out that your chances are much greater, better than you thought they were going to be. Sometimes you look and say, oh man, things are a lot more dire. And so that's one of the things I love to do with just about any game is, sit there, run the math. I ran the math on things like Blade Runner. How often are these things going to happen? It was actually very instructive and, really kind of affected the way that we played that game, even though we didn't get to play it an awful lot. I hope we get to play it again. Anyhow, I don't want this video to go any longer, but that's why I think it matters.